Welcome to Always on Wire. Today we're talking about Democratic Action Party National Vice Chief Liinesh Al-Salawandan's criticism regarding the recognition of the United Examination Certificate diploma.
And this is an issue that has really flared up again. It touches on one of those old, very sensitive fault lines in our political landscape.
It really does. So just to set the scene, the unity government is looking at formally recognizing the UEC diploma. That's the one from the independent Chinese secondary schools.
Exactly. And that consideration, just the idea of it, has sparked some, well, intense opposition.
Intense is the word for it. We've seen some very vocal pushback, mostly from the United Malay's National Organization Youth Chief, Akmal, and also from the Pan-Malaysian Islamic Party Youth Wing.
Right. And their main objection, the one Akmal is really pushing, is that recognizing the UEC fundamentally violates the national education policy.
So he's not just saying it's a bad idea, he's framing it as a matter of policy integrity.
Precisely. He's arguing that this goes against the core framework of our national education system because, the UEC isn't fully based on the Malay language curriculum.
Okay, so that's the setup. But Liinesh Al-Salawandan has fired back, and his counterattack is, well, it's pretty comprehensive.
It is. And what's interesting is that he's not just defending the UEC itself. He's going on the offensive, pointing out what he calls just blatant hypocrisy and double standards from the critics.
So that's what we're going to unpack today. We're going to follow Liinesh's argument step by step and really look at the political consistency he's trying to highlight, or maybe the lack of it.
And his first move is to shift the conversation away from, the technical policy details and straight into political memory.
He's basically saying this isn't some radical new idea that the current government just invented.
Exactly. His first strike, and it's a powerful one, is to remind everyone that the opposition themselves have made this exact same promise before.
It's a classic political move, isn't it? Use their own history against them.
And he's got the receipts, so to speak. He points directly to the Barisan Nasional Coalition's 2018 General Election Manifesto.
The last election where they were the governing party.
That's the one. And in that manifesto, there was a formal commitment to recognize the UEC diploma. It's right there in black and white.
So this wasn't just some casual remark in a speech. It was a public pledge, a core promise made to voters.
A promise made under the leadership of then-chairman Datuk Seri Najib. So when the current United Malay's National Organization Youth Chief, Akmal, says this violates policy, it creates an immediate and, frankly, very awkward contradiction.
It really forces you to ask whether this opposition is based on principle or if it's just, opportunistic.
And Liinesh doesn't stop there. The irony gets even deeper because he also takes aim at the Pan-Malaysian Islamic Party Youth Wing.
Another key group opposing the move now.
Yes, and he points out that they also explicitly promised to recognize the UEC back when they were part of the Pakatan Rakyat Coalition.
So this was in their Orange Book policy document, right?
That's it. A commitment made under the leadership of Tan Sri Hadi Awang. So you have both major opposition blocs, United Malay's National Organization and Pan-Malaysian Islamic Party, on record campaigning for the very policy they now condemn.
Which leads to a really powerful rhetorical question that Liinesh is posing here. If recognizing the UEC is such a fundamental violation of national policy,
then what does that say about their own senior leaders?
Right. Does it mean that Datuk Seri Najib and Tan Sri Hadi Awang fundamentally misunderstood one of the country's most important policies when they made those promises?
It implies one of two things, and neither is good for them. Either their top leaders were mistaken, which damages their credibility, or it suggests the policy itself is not the real issue, and this is just about opposing the current government.
And Liinesh really drives this point home. He makes this, almost sarcastic challenge to them.
He does. He basically calls on Akmal and the Pan-Malaysian Islamic Party Youth Wing to be consistent and to go protest their own leaders. To, in his words, correct their boss's errors.
That's a sharp political jab. Puts them in a very difficult position.
It completely neutralizes their argument, really. It forces them to either criticize their own party's history or look incredibly inconsistent. Liinesh is essentially saying, forget policy for a second. Explain your own past promises first.
It's a very effective way to shift the focus onto the credibility of the critics themselves. But he doesn't just stick to history, he also dives into the policy itself, claiming there's a huge double standard.
Yes, he argues that Akmal's entire case is one-sided because it conveniently ignores precedents that are already accepted in our education system.
And this is where he brings up the A-level comparison.
Exactly. This is maybe the strongest part of his policy critique. He points out that Malaysian government universities have been accepting A-level qualifications for decades.
Okay, so why is the A-level such a critical comparison here?
Well, because the main objections to the UEC, that it isn't taught in Malay and it comes from outside the government school system, apply perfectly to A-levels.
I see. So A-level students often come from private or international schools.
Right. They are outside the standard government framework, just like the independent Chinese secondary schools. And yet, A-levels are accepted without any of this political uproar about violating the national education policy.
So Liinesh's core question is, if we accept one non-government, non-Malay medium qualification,
Then why not the other? If A-levels are fine, why is the UEC, which he argues has comparable academic standards, suddenly a threat to national policy?
it makes the objection feel very selective.
It does. It suggests the resistance might not be about a neutral principle, but maybe about the specific community associated with the UEC. It puts the burden on the opposition to explain the functional difference, what makes one okay and the other a danger.
And if they can't provide a clear and non-discriminatory answer, his point about a double standard really lands.
Absolutely. So after establishing the historical hypocrisy and the policy double standard, Liinesh then moves to his most concrete piece of evidence.
The geographical reality. He points to places in Malaysia where this isn't even a debate anymore.
Yes, the argument from precedent. He reminds everyone that the governments of Sabah and Sarawak have already formally recognized the UEC diploma.
So this whole idea that it's impossible or unconstitutional is, well, undermined by the fact that it's already happening.
It's already happening and it's working. And Liinesh explains what that recognition means on the ground. It's not just a symbolic gesture.
What can UEC holders do in Sabah and Sarawak?
They can get into state universities. They can apply for state government scholarships. We're talking about state ringgit funding their education. They can even join the state civil service.
Wow, so there's tangible, functional integration happening right now.
Precisely. And Liinesh uses this to pose another devastating question. Are Akmal and the Pan-Malaysian Islamic Party youth wing now going to accuse the governments of Sabah and Sarawak of misunderstanding national policy too?
That really boxes them in. It takes the argument out of the abstract and into the real world of governance. It shows that the sky doesn't fall when you recognize the UEC.
Not at all. It proves that the obstacle is political will in the peninsula, not some fundamental policy flaw. The system can handle it.
Which must put the unity government in a much stronger position, right? They can just point to these working examples inside Malaysia.
It absolutely does. And that brings us to the last part of Liinesh's argument, his message to the current administration.
He's basically telling them to push forward.
Yes. He urges the unity government to ignore what he calls the opposition noise and to just focus on their mandate.
And he frames the UAC issue as just one small part of that bigger picture.
A very small part. He says the government was elected to deliver major structural reforms for the whole country. His message is, don't let this one issue, stirred up by parties who flip-flopped on it, derail your entire agenda.
He's calling for them to be professional and just get it done.
That's the word he uses, professional. He says they should just complete the consultation process calmly, stick to their commitments, and push education reform forward without getting distracted by what he calls meaningless opposition.
It's a bold strategy, telling them to essentially ignore their political opponents.
It is, and there's a risk. Some might see it as too confrontational, but his overall argument, from history to policy to precedent, is designed to make the opposition's stance look completely hollow.
So when you pull it all together, the historical promises from Najib and Hadi Awang, the A-level double standard, the reality in Sabah and Sarawak.
It all points to one conclusion in his view, that this fight isn't really about the national education policy. It's about using this issue as a political tool to disrupt the unity government.
And that really is the central question for anyone watching this unfold. Is this a principled defensive policy, or is it a political maneuver? And, for you listening, when you consider that major leaders once supported this and 2 states are already doing it, what do you think is the real hurdle here?
That question cuts right to the heart of it. It's a powerful reminder that in politics, what you promised yesterday can become a weapon against you today.
A fascinating and complex issue, really well broken down.
Remember to like and subscribe for more videos like this.